Tokyo is not crowded by mistake. It is dense by necessity. Density here is not the result of ambition or opportunity or even prosperity in the way those words are usually understood. It is the physical outcome of a country that ran out of room long before it ran out of people. Japan is mountainous, sharply fragmented, and geologically unsettled. Roughly 4/5 of its land is either too steep, too unstable, or too remote to support large-scale settlement. What remains is not evenly distributed, but scattered in narrow plains that function less like open territory and more like pressure valves. The Kanto Plain, where Tokyo sits, is the largest of those valves. It was never the best place to build a city. It was simply the least impossible. This matters because Tokyo did not grow outward in the way most large cities do. It did not expand into abundance. It condensed into limitation. Before Tokyo existed, there was Edo. Before Edo, there were fishing villages, rice fields, marshland, and river deltas that flooded unpredictably and shifted without warning. Nothing about this landscape invited permanence. But geography does not need to invite settlement. It only needs to fail less completely than the alternatives. As Japan's population increased, movement followed the path of least resistance, not the path of comfort. Mountain villages reached carrying capacity. Coastal settlements collided with cliffs. Inland plateaus fractured into isolation. People moved not because they wanted to, but because there was nowhere left that could absorb them. Tokyo began as a convergence point long before it became a destination. This is the first inversion that defines the city. Most cities grow because they attract. Tokyo grew because it absorbed. Absorption creates a different kind of urban psychology. It produces a city that does not promise fulfillment, but continuity, not comfort, but function. Tokyo never offered escape. It offered survival through organization. That organization had to account for something most cities are built to deny: instability. Tokyo sits at the intersection of multiple tectonic plates. Earthquakes are not anomalies here, they are background conditions. Typhoons arrive seasonally. Flooding reshapes river systems. Fire, historically, was as destructive as any seismic event. In many places, repeated destruction leads to abandonment. In Tokyo, it led to revision. Not revision in the sense of perfecting the city, but in redefining what the city was allowed to be. Tokyo learned early that permanence was unrealistic, so it abandoned the idea, and therefore buildings were not designed to last centuries. Neighborhoods were not designed to remain fixed. Ownership became flexible and replacement became normal. This is often misread as cultural preference. It is not. It is structural adaptation. After the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, which killed more than 100,000 people and erased vast sections of the city, Tokyo faced a decision that many cities confronted and failed. It could rebuild itself as it was, clinging to familiarity. Or it could alter its internal logic. Tokyo chose the latter. Streets widened, fire breaks appeared, zoning shifted. Not to eliminate disaster, because disaster could not be eliminated, but to reduce the cost of recurrence. Tokyo did not try to stop earthquakes. It tried to make them survivable. This distinction is critical. Most cities are built around the assumption of stability, with disaster treated as interruption. Tokyo was rebuilt around the assumption of recurrence, with stability treated as temporary. This changes everything. Infrastructure here is designed to fail gracefully. Buildings flex rather than resist. Systems are layered with redundancy, not elegance. What looks inefficient on paper becomes resilient in practice. This is where Tokyo begins to diverge sharply from other megacities. Its scale is not held together by dominance, but by distribution. There is no single center that must survive for the city to function. Instead, Tokyo operates as a constellation of semi-autonomous cores. Shinjuku is not Shibuya. Shibuya is not Ueno. Ueno is not Ikebukuro. Each contains employment, transit, retail, housing, and social infrastructure dense enough to operate independently, yet integrated enough to remain connected. If one core falters, the others compensate. This is not accidental. It is structural insurance. The rail network reinforces this logic. Tokyo's trains are not optimized for spectacle or simplicity. They are optimized for volume, overlap, and rerouting. Delays occur daily. The system survives them. Millions of people move through the city not because it never fails, but because its failures remain local. A delayed train inconveniences. It does not paralyze. That difference allows density to scale without collapse. This brings us to the second inversion. In many cities, density amplifies dysfunction. In Tokyo, density smooths it. The closer people are packed, the more viable services become. The more viable services become, the less distance matters. The less distance matters, the more tolerant people become of small living spaces. Tokyo compresses life, but reduces friction. This trade-off defines the city, but compression is not free. Tokyo's housing is small, not because minimalism is fashionable, but because land here is too scarce to indulge in efficiency. Apartments shrink, storage disappears, privacy becomes conditional, homes are functional, not expressive. This creates a city where life happens outside the home more than within it. Streets, stations, shops, and offices absorb the social load. Tokyo externalizes living. This is where many outsiders misinterpret the city. They see crowds and assume chaos. They see small apartments and assume deprivation. What they miss is substitution. Tokyo does not remove comfort, it redistributes it. You give up space at home and gain access everywhere else. Access becomes the currency of livability. Access, however, requires reliability, and reliability requires discipline. Tokyo's systems work because they are predictable. Trains arrive on time, rules are enforced quietly, expectations are consistent. This predictability allows people to tolerate density that would feel unbearable elsewhere. In cities where systems fail unpredictably, density feels aggressive. In Tokyo, density feels managed, not controlled, managed. That distinction matters. At this point, it is tempting to frame Tokyo as a triumph of planning. It is not. It is a triumph of adjustment. Tokyo did not emerge fully formed. It was shaped by repeated correction, forced by geography and reinforced by necessity. This is why comparisons to cities like Patagonia fail. Patagonia offers space, but no stability. Tokyo offers stability, but no space. One defeats settlement by refusing consolidation. The other traps settlement by making consolidation inevitable. Tokyo is not large because it is attractive in the romantic sense. It is large because it solves a problem most landscapes never impose. What happens when people cannot spread out? Most societies avoid this question by expanding outward. Tokyo just could not. So it went vertical, layered, and repetitive. Life stacked on life. This stacking, however, produces long-term consequences. And this is where Tokyo's success begins to reveal its limits. Tokyo continues to absorb population not because it grows opportunity endlessly, but because alternatives wither. Japan's rural regions empty steadily. Schools close, services consolidate, infrastructure decays. Young people move toward Tokyo not because they dream of it, but because the system elsewhere cannot sustain them. Tokyo becomes not a magnet, but a basin. Once inside, leaving becomes difficult. Not because Tokyo traps people intentionally, but because the rest of the landscape no longer offers comparable feedback loops. This creates a city that is constantly full, yet quietly exhausted. Energy flows inward, replacement does not. Birth rates fall, the population ages. Tokyo grows numerically, but thins demographically. This is a slow process, almost invisible, but it matters. Tokyo's systems were designed to handle volume. They were not designed to reverse decline. Density can stabilize services. It cannot generate renewal indefinitely. This tension defines the city's future. At this stage, Tokyo still works. Trains still run. Systems still align. Life continues. But the margin narrows. And that brings us to the question Tokyo never fully resolved. What happens when a city built on compression reaches its limit? That question cannot be answered without examining what Tokyo prevents, not just what it enables, and that is where we will go next. Tokyo's greatest strength is also its quietest vulnerability. The city functions because it compresses complexity into predictable systems, but those systems only remain stable as long as the surrounding environment continues to feed them with people, labor, and purpose. Tokyo does not generate its own renewal automatically. It relies on constant inflow to sustain equilibrium. For decades, that inflow was assumed to be permanent. It is no longer clear that it is. Japan's demographic shift did not begin in Tokyo. It began outside it. Rural depopulation accelerated first. Then regional cities began to thin. Entire prefectures entered long-term decline, not because they were suddenly unlivable, but because they could no longer sustain the institutional density required to retain younger generations. Schools merged, hospitals consolidated, transportation routes became less frequent. Once services degraded beyond a threshold, departure became rational rather than emotional. Tokyo absorbed the consequences. This is an important distinction. Tokyo did not create Japan's demographic crisis. It became the pressure sink for it. As more people concentrated into the metropolitan region, Tokyo appeared to defy the national trend. Its population stabilized, then grew, even as the country overall began to shrink. This created the impression that Tokyo was immune to the forces affecting the rest of Japan. It was not immune, it was insulated. Insulation delays impact, it does not remove it. The city's structure depends on replacement cycles. Older residents leave the workforce. Younger residents replace them. Consumption patterns remain stable. Infrastructure investment remains justified. Density maintains its feedback loops. But replacement is now slowing. Tokyo's median age continues to rise. Household size continues to shrink. Birth rates remain low. The city still appears full, but fullness is not the same as renewal. A crowded system can still be aging. Tokyo's efficiency hides this transition remarkably well. Trains still arrive on time, shops remain open, construction continues. The visible indicators of decline are muted by scale. When a city of this size loses momentum, it does not collapse. It thins, and thinning is harder to detect. This brings us to the third inversion. In most cities, inefficiency reveals decline early. In Tokyo, efficiency delays recognition. The city's systems are so optimized that they continue to function even as underlying demand shifts subtly downward. Capacity exceeds usage, but not enough to trigger failure. This is both a strength and a risk. Tokyo's rail network, for example, was built to accommodate peak loads that assumed continued population growth. As ridership patterns flatten, trains do not disappear. They simply carry fewer people. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. But financially, the equation changes. Maintenance costs remain constant. Revenue does not. The system absorbs the difference quietly for now. Housing follows a similar pattern. Tokyo does not experience housing collapse in the dramatic sense. Instead, it experiences continuous replacement. Old buildings are demolished, new ones are built. The cycle continues regardless of long-term population projections. This creates the illusion of vitality. In reality, it reflects a system that values flexibility over permanence, even when permanence might become necessary. The city's built environment assumes turnover. That assumption was once aligned with demographic reality. It may not be forever. Tokyo's planners understand this tension. They have for years. Attempts at decentralization have been made repeatedly, often quietly, often unsuccessfully. Government offices moved, corporate headquarters relocated satellite functions, infrastructure investments targeted regional hubs. The logic was sound, the outcome was limited. Decentralization failed not because Tokyo resisted it culturally, but because the rest of the system could not match Tokyo's reliability. People will accept smaller apartments. They will accept long commutes. They will accept dense living. What they will not accept is institutional uncertainty. Outside Tokyo, services degrade faster. Career mobility narrows. Access fragments. As long as Tokyo remains the most predictable environment in the country, it will continue to concentrate population regardless of policy intent. This is the paradox at the heart of the city. Tokyo is too effective to decentralize itself. Its success undermines the alternatives meant to relieve it. Environmental risk compounds this paradox. Tokyo is safer than its geography suggests, but not invulnerable. Seismic resilience reduces immediate casualties. Flood controls mitigate predictable surges. Fire suppression prevents cascading disasters. What these systems do not address is systemic interruption. A major earthquake would not need to level the city to cause long-term damage. It would only need to disrupt synchronization. Trains delayed across networks, power fluctuations, data centers affected, supply chains fractured. Tokyo survives disasters because it recovers quickly, but recovery assumes external stability. A city this dense cannot self-isolate. This is where Tokyo diverges sharply from places like Labrador, Iceland, or Patagonia. Those regions remain empty because the land resists human systems. Tokyo is full because human systems overwhelm the land. Both strategies carry limits. Tokyo's limit is not collapse. It is saturation, not physical saturation, but systemic saturation. At a certain scale, marginal gains disappear. Efficiency cannot be optimized further without introducing fragility. The city is approaching that boundary. This does not mean Tokyo will fail. It means it will change. Cities do not disappear overnight. They adapt, recalibrate, and reframe their purpose. Tokyo's future is not one of abandonment, but of contraction within continuity. What might that look like? Less emphasis on growth, more emphasis on maintenance. Fewer new megaprojects, more adaptive reuse. A city that stops expanding outward and begins folding inward. This would not make Tokyo weaker. It would make it older. And aging cities behave differently. They become more conservative in risk, more cautious in innovation, more dependent on legacy systems. This could stabilize Tokyo for decades, or it could entrench fragility. The question Tokyo faces is not whether it can survive. It already has. The question is whether a city built to solve spatial scarcity can redefine itself in an era of demographic scarcity. Those are different problems. They require different solutions. Tokyo's original genius was acknowledging constraint rather than denying it. It accepted limited land, unstable ground, and constant risk, then organized itself accordingly. Its next challenge will require similar honesty, not about earthquakes or space, but about scale. Because Tokyo's story is not one of triumph over nature, it is a story of negotiation between density and livability, between efficiency and resilience, between permanence and flexibility. For more than a century, Tokyo negotiated successfully. Now the terms are shifting. This does not make Tokyo a warning, it makes it a case study. A demonstration of what happens when human systems adapt so well that they outrun the conditions that produced them. Tokyo should not exist in the way we expect cities to exist. And yet it does. Not because it defeated geography, but because it learned how to coexist with limits. Whether it can do so again will define its next century.